Today we are going to learn about Thomas Jefferson's presidency. By the end of this lecture, you will know about Jefferson's goal of reducing government, the duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, the Land Act of 1800, the Louisiana Purchase, and the Embargo Act of 1807. Thomas Jefferson entered office with a straightforward agenda. His goal was to reduce the influence of the national government in the lives of the American people. To accomplish his goals, Jefferson reversed much of what the Federalists had done. He refused to deliver speeches to Congress, claiming that it would seem too much like the act of a king. He also reduced the amount of taxes paid by the American people and severely cut the size of the federal bureaucracy, which are the departments and workers that make up the federal government. Jefferson also slashed the size of the army from 12,000 soldiers to only 3,000. His goal was to again limit the national government's presence in people's lives. His program made him extremely popular during his first term, and in 1804 he easily won re-election. Jefferson's greatest rivals were his ambitious Vice President Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, who was now a lawyer in New York. The two men had been enemies for a long time because they disagreed over politics. In the summer of 1804, Burr challenged Hamilton to a duel. Dueling was illegal in both New York and New Jersey, but the consequences in New York was death if you were caught dueling. So they decided to duel in New Jersey where the consequences were less severe. On July 11, 1804, they met outside Weehawken, New Jersey. Hamilton's shot missed Burr, but Burr's shot hit Hamilton in the abdomen, piercing his liver and spine. Alexander Hamilton died the next day in Manhattan. With one shot, Burr removed the leader of the Federalists and wrecked his own political future. Although he was never tried and he continued his role as vice president, Burr was never again a serious challenge to Thomas Jefferson. As a strict constructionist, Jefferson opposed the development of a strong central government. However, Jefferson used the power and the money of the national government to expand the U.S. west of the Appalachian Mountains. The Land Act of 1800 allowed Americans to buy land in the West in small parcels and on credit in order to speed up the process by which territories could become states. Federal land offices appeared across the West, making easier the transfer of land from government to its citizens. American farmers in the West depended on the Mississippi River to transport their crops to foreign markets. The French controlled the river and used this control to extract large sums of money from the American traders who had no choice but to travel the Mississippi. Fearing French control and Napoleon's ambitions, Jefferson in 1803 sent James Monroe to Paris to buy the city of New Orleans. Congress instructed Monroe that he could pay up to $10 million for the city. Napoleon refused to sell New Orleans to the U.S., but offered instead to sell all the French claims known as Louisiana. Not daring to ask him to wait for weeks or months for an answer, Monroe offered Napoleon $15 million for the Louisiana Purchase. James Monroe hoped that the Congress and the President would later support his decision. When Jefferson heard of the agreement with the French, he was troubled. The Constitution did not mention how to purchase foreign lands. He was also weary of spending large amounts of public money. However, he overcame his doubts and urged Congress to approve the sale. The Louisiana Purchase dramatically increased both the national debt and the size of the U.S. Congress agreed to finance Jefferson's call for an expedition to explore the area included in the Louisiana Purchase. Jefferson chose his private secretary, Lewis, to lead the expedition. Lewis, in turn, chose Clark as his companion officer. The Lewis and Clark expedition began in the spring of 1804. Their goals were to search for river routes to the Western Ocean, make contact with the Native Americans living in the territory, and gather information about the region's natural resources. To help in this task, the expedition hired a French-Canadian fur trapper and his wife, Sacagawea, a Shoshone Native American, as interpreters. The expedition reached the Pacific Ocean late in 1805 and returned east by September of 1806. The journey that had lasted 2 years and 4 months succeeded in filling many of the details of the vast lands to the west. Jay's Treaty, under which the U.S. had remained at peace with Great Britain, expired in 1805. To deal with the increasing seizing of American ships by both the French and British, Congress passed the Embargo Act of 1807, which outlawed almost all trade with foreign countries. An embargo is a restriction on trade. However, the Embargo Act did not really hurt the British or the French trade. Many Americans, on the other hand, hated the embargo, particularly New Englanders who made their living through trade. They now smuggled goods to Great Britain and other countries in defiance of the President and Congress. With the authority of the national government at stake, Jefferson had no alternative but to use his small navy and federal agents to enforce the law. The embargo ruined Jefferson's second term. Many Americans despise the direct interference of the national government in the economy. In the election of 1808, Thomas Jefferson's Secretary of State, James Madison, was elected president. So by now you should be able to answer the following 6 questions. How did Jefferson reach his goal of reducing the influence of the national government in people's lives? How did Burr's shot affect history? How did the Land Act of 1800 help the U.S. expand? Why is the Louisiana Purchase important? What were the goals of the Lewis and Clark expedition? And finally, how did the Embargo Act of 1807 affect Americans? Remember to go ahead and answer your blog, and I will see you tomorrow in class.